Ever come across something that just completely shifts how you think about a place? Well, today, that's exactly what we're digging into. We're doing a deep dive into the pretty surprising world of snow in the desert.
Yeah, you heard that right. Snow. In the desert.
We've got a whole stack of sources here, articles from places like Desert, Mission, Biomes, USGS, the BBC, Live Science, YouTube channels like The Planet Voice and the New Africa Channel.
Plus some travel blogs, Rainviewer, the Royal Meteorological Society, Telegraphy, Daily Maverick. Quite a list.
It is. And our mission today, basically to figure out how and why these famously hot, dry places sometimes get snow and, what it all means.
It really does challenge that classic desert image, doesn't it? Endless dunes, scorching sun.
Totally. Instead, we're picturing something completely different.
So to really get why this is so unusual, maybe we should first nail down what actually makes a desert. Well, a desert.
It's a good idea. Let's get the basics clear.
Yeah.
So according to Desert, Mission, Biomes, the key thing is really low precipitation.
Right. Very little rain or snow.
We're talking less than 250, maybe 300 millimeters a year, which, to give you some perspective, is only about 10% of what a rainforest gets.
Wow, okay. That's dry.
And the temperatures, extreme swings. You can have average daytime highs hitting, 38 degrees Celsius?
Pretty hot, but then at night?
It plummets. Average
yeah.
low of around minus 3.9 Celsius.
Below freezing, yeah. And the plant life has to cope with all that, the dryness, the temperature shifts.
Right, things like cacti, small bushes, short grasses.
Yeah.
Stuff built for survival.
Exactly. And desert, Mission, Biomes, points out, where these hot deserts mostly are sort of between 15 and 35 degrees latitude, north and south of the equator.
So places like the Mojave, Sahara.
Neg, Gobi, that whole band around the globe shares that basic dryness.
Yeah.
Which, as you said, leads to amazing plant adaptation.
Like storing water, tiny leaves.
Huge root systems to find water, or even super short life cycles, just blooming when there's that rare bit of rain.
Okay, so bearing that picture in mind, incredibly dry, extreme temperatures, the idea of snow seems even more, wild.
It does, because it's not just about getting cold enough, is it?
No, you need something else that's usually missing.
You absolutely do. You need two things at once. Freezing temperatures, obviously, and enough moisture in the air to actually form snow crystals.
And in hot deserts, it's almost always that moisture part that's lacking.
That's the key. The USGS Earthview piece really stresses how rare snow is in the Sahara. Sure, high mountains in Africa get snow, Kilimanjaro, for instance.
Right.
But down in the lower desert areas, very uncommon. You mentioned Ain Sefra in Algeria, a town we'll hear more about.
Ah, yes, the gateway to the desert.
Exactly. Average summer temp there is 99 Fahrenheit, which is about 37 Celsius. And annual rainfall, just a tiny amount.
So the odds of getting both freezing cold and enough moisture together there must be incredibly low.
Vanishingly small, usually, which is why these recent snowfall events have caught so much attention.
Let's talk about those specific instances, starting with that one in Ain Sefra, Algeria, back in December 2016. That seemed to be the one that really went viral.
It absolutely did. I mean, we saw coverage everywhere: USGS, BBC, Live Science, Travel Triangle, Rainviewer, Royal Meteorological Society, Telegraphy, Daily Maverick. They all reported on it.
And many mentioned it was the first significant snow there since, 1979?
February 1979, according to the BBC and Travel Triangle. So, yeah, a really big deal for the people living there. Almost 40 years.
And we saw those satellite images, right? USGS and Live Science had them from Landsat, this incredible white covering the reddish-orange sand.
Stunning visuals. Really drove home how unusual it was.
And it wasn't just a quick dusting either, was it? Some of the later events were quite significant.
No, definitely not. In 2018, Live Science and the Royal Meteorological Society reported up to 15 inches. That's about 40 centimeters in some places.
Wow.
And Daily Maverick mentioned up to 30 centimeters in the higher areas near Ain Sefra for that same event.
And it didn't stop there, did it? There were reports again in 2021.
Yes. Rainviewer and Telegraphy noted snow in 2021.
And even a lighter dusting in January 2022.
Mm-hmm.
BBC and Daily Maverick mentioned that.
It does seem like these events, or at least reports of them, have popped up more frequently in recent years.
Do we know why that 2018 snowfall happened, meteorologically speaking?
Well, the Royal Meteorological Society had an explanation. They said it was linked to a high-pressure system over Europe.
Okay.
This high pressure essentially pushed a mass of very cold air much further south than usual, right over that part of North Africa.
Ah, so like a cold air outbreak reaching an unusual spot.
Precisely. A large-scale weather pattern creating those specific rare conditions.
Hmm.
And you saw the impact. Telegraphy mentioned the icy blanket on the dunes. The BBC had photos of kids playing in it.
Yeah, those images really stick with you. White on red sand just doesn't compute visually at first.
Exactly. But it wasn't only the Sahara getting snow, right? Our sources mentioned other hot deserts too.
That's right, Saudi Arabia, for instance. Those YouTube videos from the Planet Voice and the New Africa channel, plus Rain Viewer, covered snow there in January 2022.
In the Al Jaf, Tabuk, and Azir regions, and the Planet Voice made a point that for the Al Jaf region, this was apparently a really novel event, something they hadn't seen before like that.
And the cause there? Was a similar setup to the Sahara snow?
A bit different, actually. The UAE's Weather Center, cited by the Planet Voice, linked it to low-pressure systems.
Okay, low pressure instead of high pressure.
Yeah, these systems apparently pulled in moisture all the way from the Arabian Sea, so a different mechanism, but the same result. Moisture reaching a very dry place.
And we saw those pictures too. Camels standing in the snow.
Yeah, the New Africa channel shared those. Another one of those wait what kind of images.
And Rain Viewer also briefly noted snow in the Atacama Desert in Chile.
Which is famously the driest non-polar desert on Earth.
And even parts of Mexico.
Yeah,
So this phenomenon, while rare, isn't exclusive to North Africa.
definitely not. It shows these unusual weather patterns can happen in various arid regions.
Okay, so we've seen where it happens. Let's get a bit more into the how. What exactly needs to line up in the atmosphere?
Right, the science bit.
Hmm.
Rain Viewer and Daily Maverick are helpful here. As we've said, the absolute must-haves are temperatures below freezing, 0 degrees Celsius,
Yeah.
and enough moisture in the air. Rain Viewer talks about how this can happen. Maybe an unusually strong cold front pushes through,
Okay.
or you get some moisture-rich air moving in at higher altitudes, or just those rare shifts in the big atmospheric pressure patterns we talked about.
And Daily Maverick has some specifics for the Sahara, didn't
Yeah.
they? About how moisture can get there.
They did. They explained that in winter, sometimes the air circulation patterns shift, and you can get cooler, moister air drawn in from the Atlantic or the Mediterranean towards the northern Sahara.
Especially near mountains, like the Atlas Mountains.
Exactly. Higher elevations play a key role, because when that moist air hits the mountains, it's forced upwards.
Right, orographic lift.
Precisely. As the air rises, the pressure drops, it expands, and it cools down. Colder air can't hold as much water vapor.
So it condenses. Clouds form.
Clouds form, and if it's cold enough both up where the clouds are and near the ground, that condensation falls as snow instead of rain.
Makes sense. Cold air, moisture source, and often a trigger like mountains to lift the air.
That's the recipe.
Okay, but given these multiple events, at least in the Sahara recently, the elephant in the room is climate change, isn't it? Are these events becoming more common because the climate is changing?
That is the million-dollar question, and several sources definitely bring it up. The YouTube channels, Travel Triangle, Rain Viewer, Daily Maverick, they all touch on it.
And the Planet Voice mentioned an MIT projection.
Yeah, suggesting countries like Saudi Arabia might see more severe weather swings in the future due to global warming, more extremes.
It's complicated, right? You can't just point to one snowfall and definitively say that's climate change.
Exactly, and scientists are rightly very cautious about that. Both the New Africa Channel and the Planet Voice highlight this need to distinguish between single weather events and long-term climate trends. There's always natural variability in the climate system.
So natural cycles could be playing a role too.
Could be. The Royal Meteorological Society makes the broader point that globally, climate change is generally leading to more unpredictable and extreme weather. But linking one specific event is harder.
And Daily Maverick added another important wrinkle, didn't they? About the historical data.
A really crucial point. They noted that reliable, detailed records of Sahara snowfall before the satellite era, basically before the 1970s, are pretty limited.
So it's hard to know for sure if it's really happening more often now than, say, 100 years ago. We just don't have the data.
Precisely. They do suggest climate change might be increasing rainfall variability on the Sahara's edges, which could potentially make conditions for snow slightly more likely sometimes, but it's still an area of active research.
Okay, so the climate change link is uncertain but plausible and definitely something scientists are looking at. What about the more immediate impacts when snow does fall?
Well, on the one hand, you have this sense of sheer awe and wonder. The New Africa Channel and Travel Triangle talk about how amazing it is for locals and tourists.
I can imagine.
It's this incredible temporary transformation of the landscape, as Rainviewer also notes, just visually stunning.
But is there a downside? These are fragile ecosystems, aren't they? Can they handle sudden snow?
That's the New Africa Channel touches on potential negative environmental impacts. Desert life is adapted to specific, harsh conditions.
Right.
A sudden dump of snow and moisture, the abrupt temperature change, that could disrupt things, maybe harm certain plants, affect soil, potentially open the door for non-native species if it happens repeatedly. It's a shock to the system.
Yeah. Beautiful, but potentially disruptive.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
On a related note, the Planet Voice did mention Saudi Arabia's big push towards renewable energy with their Vision 2030 plan.
As a way to address broader climate issues.
That seems to be the connection they were making, yes. And they also threw in a reminder about individual action, reducing our own carbon footprints.
Always a relevant point.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap this up,
Yeah.
what are the main takeaways from this deep dive into desert snow?
I think the main thing is that snow in hot deserts, while still very rare, is a real phenomenon. It happens when you get that unlikely combination of freezing cold air and enough moisture.
A combination that just doesn't happen often in those places.
Exactly. And these events are fascinating reminders of how complex and sometimes surprising our planet's weather systems can be.
And the climate change question.
It's still being studied. We can't definitively say these specific events are caused by it, but they certainly fit into a broader picture of potentially more variable and extreme weather globally. They definitely make you think.
They really do. Which leads to our final thought for you, the listener. Considering all this, the rarity, the science, the potential climate links, what does this increasing awareness of weird weather in extreme places suggest about our planet's future climate? And what other questions has this dive sparked for you? Definitely something to mull over.
Absolutely. And if this has piqued your interest, we definitely encourage you to check out the sources we mentioned or just dive deeper into meteorology and climate science. It's a fascinating